Okay, the last problem for Chapter 4 was S47. S47 was another skills development case, and it asked you to use Excel to complete a case for Escalade Inc. In order to access that case, you'd want to go to the student website. So the student website here, it's provided to you in the book. Remember, you're not clicking on the link that says connect. You're clicking on the link for the student edition of the website. Once you click on that student edition, you're brought here. It'll actually say choose this chapter here. It won't have this information down here. But when you get to that, you click on the skills development cases here. And then once you click that, you go to Chapter 4, click that guy, and it should bring you over to something that looks like this. If you scroll down, you would have found S47 right here. One quick thing I want to bring to your attention: don't do more work than is necessary for each problem, okay? In the first class period that we've had for this semester, I indicated to you that there is Excel templates that are provided by the student edition of the website. And those Excel templates will have a lot of the information that you need to type up already done for you, so that it limits your time by not having to do data entry, but instead actually learning to work with Excel. So I'll show you real quickly how to do that. If you were to click on choose a chapter down here, okay, click on choose a chapter, and then click on Chapter 4. It brings this information down here once you click on each chapter. If you click on the Excel templates right here, it brings you over to these Excel templates. I clicked on 2007, depending on the version, you click on whichever Excel you have. But once you click that, it'll open up a zip file, and when you unload the zip file, you'll find that you're given templates right here. There's a lot of different templates for each type of Excel problem that they're given. A lot of different information. But the one that we're working with here is going to be S47. So you can see that all of the trial balance, account names, and amounts are already typed up for you. So they provide them all in Excel. So use this to your advantage so that you don't have to do data entry and also solve the problem. Instead, use this to get the data you already need, and then just modify it in order to get the actual solution you want. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that real quickly. All right, with that being said, when we go to read the problem here, it tells you that you were hired by a company to put together some financial statements, and the company has a very, very detailed list of account balances. So a whole lot of account balances listed out. The first thing that you have to do is prepare an adjusted trial balance. Okay, so right here it asks you to prepare an adjusted trial balance based upon this information up here, all this information in tan. Notice that it tells you that all of these accounts right here have already been adjusted. There's no adjusting journal entries that you have to make. No journal entries whatsoever. You simply, the first step is to put together an adjusted trial balance. So the numbers have already been adjusted for you. In order to do that, we take the data that they already gave us here. Okay, they've already listed out the data here. Or if you typed it up, that's fine as well. You take it and list them out in order so that it facilitates the preparation of the financial statements. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we look, I've typed out all the accounts for you here. But if you look at these, at the top part, if I scroll all the way down to about right here, I've got row 22, and this will be posted on Moodle as well. But row 22, all of these accounts right here represent your assets. And if you were to look all the way from row 14 here up to cash, those are all your current assets. So remember that when you're talking about the trial balance lists the accounts in order of the financial statement. That's like the first modification for how you list out the accounts. First, it's the order of financial statements. Within that order, we list all the current assets and then non-current assets first. Then the current liabilities, non-current liabilities, then stockholders' equity. Then after that, it would be the income statement, starting with the revenues and then the expenses. Remember, when you're listing out current assets, they're listed out in order of liquidity. Which ones will turn to cash or be used up first? When you list out current liabilities, it's which ones will be paid first. Okay, which ones will be paid first? All of these being current liabilities. When you list out income statement, it's typically the order biggest to smallest. And that usually depends on what you know first, okay? In this problem, we were asked to group accounts that are similar in nature together. Because this trial balance was so voluminous, there was so much detail provided, the users of the financial statement didn't need all that detail. So the order that we have listed on this trial balance that I have listed out, it won't exactly follow the whole biggest to smallest on the income statement or most liquidity to least liquidity, simply because I've grouped some accounts that are similar in nature. Make sure that when you're looking at your trial balance, that the debit side right here equals the credit side. So here's your check figure total, $267,301. That is the main purpose of the trial balance, is that all debits equal all credits. The secondary purpose is to be like a middle point or an intermediary step to creating your financial statements. So after you get done with all the journal entries and you summarize in the T accounts, you create the trial balance, and then from that, you create the financial statements. Okay? Once we get our adjusted trial balance created, the next step on the problem asks us to prepare an income statement, statement of retained earnings, and a balance sheet by linking the numbers from one place to the next. And if you scroll down to where this email is, so it says on this problem that you email one of your friends and you ask them for information on how to do this. And they give you a format here of what the balance sheet should look like. So they tell you, here is exactly what we want our balance sheet to look like. Our first step, and I started with the balance sheet first because they tell us exactly what they want it to look like. Our first step is to figure out which numbers that they want us to combine. If we go over here and start putting like accounts in similar locations. So for instance, they tell us that they want one line item called receivables here, okay? So I've taken all of the accounts that have the word receivable after them and I've put them in the same location. So accounts receivable, interest receivable, notes receivable. If I take this and I add it up, you can see at the bottom of the screen here, Excel does a sum total for you, and you can see that our total of these three accounts right here are $34,956. When I look over to the email help that was provided, you see the total of receivables is $34,956. So using this format that they've given us in the email, here's what I've done. And they even provide you the formula here that you use when creating your balance sheet. So if I go over here and look at my balance sheet here, I've created a similar situation. I'll show you real quickly how I link these. Put our header up at the top, start with assets, current assets. The first current asset is always going to be cash. Cash is the most liquid, obviously, because it's already turned into cash. I'm going to back this out real quick. So I've just pushed backspace and got it out of there. In order to link this to my tab over here, because notice here's where my trial balance is, here's where my balance sheet is, I just push plus, or I could push equal. Either one, it'll do the same thing. I'm going to hit plus, and then click on the trial balance tab and click the cell I want. So all I do is push plus, go to the tab I want to link, and then click on the cell. After I've clicked on that, it should be blinking right around here to show you that it's clicked it. Just push enter. After that, just push enter. And notice that my amount shows up here. Okay? So what I've done is I've linked the cash amount here to the cash in the trial balance. The next thing that I want to do is I want to sum up all the similar accounts. For that, and we'll start with receivables, I'm going to back this out, so just push backspace. I'm going to hit plus, type the word sum, put a parentheses, so I'm going to start parentheses. That will start my list of cells that I want to be summed. I'll click on my trial balance, I'll grab the cells, I'll just hold down my mouse, hold down the cursor, and grab the cells that I want. They should all be blinking. This blinking, this whole big box, indicates that I'm summing up all of these. Then I put the end parentheses. So I hold down shift and hit 0, which will end the parentheses, and then click enter. Now you notice that my cells sum up to be 34,956. And then if we go back to the problem, we can see that this matches the 34,956 that they want. After that, it's just rinse and repeat. Do the same thing with inventories, and I've color-coded them here. So all the inventories add up to be the 20,549. All the prepaids add up to be 542, etc., etc. So you just add up all the ones that they indicated that they want added over here. So they give you the check figures. Each one of these are totals. And then they show you the entire formula, or format, that they want. So once you do that, your balance sheet, your check figure, your total assets should sum up to be 96,786. And if we were to go over this problem, we see that the total that they had was 96,786. So that's for the balance sheet. We've already worked with the other sum formula. Just to give you a recap of last class period, or last Excel assignment that we've had. I'll back this out. If I want to add up everything above this, I just can click the sum over here, or I can, top right hand corner, or I can also just type sum plus sum. But if I click that, it will grab everything that's immediately above it, so long as there is not a break in the numbers. And then I push enter, and it gives me the total here. Okay. Same with liabilities, same with stockholders' equity. Notice that liabilities and stockholders' equity sum up to the same thing the total assets sum up to be. Okay. For the income statement, there's just a couple items I want to mention here. For the income statement, there are usually 3 items that we separate on the income statement. 3 items that we separate on the income statement. One of them is cost of goods sold. One of them is interest expense, and one of them is income tax expense. These expenses are typically always shown separately. The reason why is because these expenses are used for ratio calculations by users in a format that we call the multi-step income statement. Right now in class, we've only learned a format called the single-step income statement. We probably haven't even called it that. But the single-step income statement is how it sounds. There's just one step before you get to the total. The step is revenues minus expenses. And then the answer is net income. So revenues minus expenses equals net income. With the multi-step income statement, there's a whole lot of subtotals in between. These subtotals are used for various calculations, various ratios, various analyses performed by the users. And we'll talk more about that in chapter 5. But for right now, we've only learned the single-step income statement. So I tell you that in the multi-step income statement, in the most simplest form, we always break out cost of goods sold, which is an expense, interest expense, and income tax expense. And income tax expense is typically always last. It always goes as the last expense. Okay. Real quickly to mention about cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is an expense for companies that sell goods. Right now, most of our experience has been with companies that provide services. When a company sells goods, the expense associated with selling their inventory is called cost of goods sold. Before they sell their inventory, we defer that cost, the cost to make the good or to buy the good from someone else. For instance, Walmart, they don't make all the stuff that they sell. They instead buy it from somewhere else, and then they resell it. So they're like the middleman where they sell it. They're the outlet, the retailer. Okay? Inventory represents the cost to buy those goods. We place that cost on the balance sheet until we sell them. When we sell them, we move that cost from the balance sheet to the income statement. How do we move that cost to the income statement? Through the account cost of goods sold, which is an expense account. Okay? One more quick item that I want to mention, depreciation expense. Depreciation expense is kind of an item that can go either way. Sometimes depreciation expense is broken out separately depending on the format that the company uses, and sometimes it's included with selling, general, and administrative expenses. Okay? I've broken it out here separately so that you could see it and so that we could talk about it, but it could have also been included with selling, general, and administrative expenses. All the other expenses on the trial balance here have been summed together with selling, general, administrative expenses. Remember we talked about combining expense accounts into the general account, selling, general, administrative expenses when we talked about homework E42. E42 did that as well. If you refer back to that trial balance, you can see that. But if you sum up all of the maroon items right here, you will get the total of selling, general, and administrative expenses here. And then again, you take revenues minus all the expenses, and you'll get operating expenses. Or I'm sorry, you'll get income before tax expense. And then if you take that minus expense, you'll get net income. Operating expenses is the sum of all the expenses above it. Okay? All right, so we get net income, and going over to the statement of retained earnings, notice that this is linked here. If I back this out, I would push a plus, click on the income statement, and get the total here. And that would give me total net income. Remember, the format for the statement of retained earnings is beginning balance plus net income minus dividends equals ending balance. The last thing that I want to mention, notice that the beginning balance here for retained earnings, this is retained earnings beginning balance, equals the balance shown on the trial balance for retained earnings right here. Okay? The balance shown on the trial balance for retained earnings. Why? Because this is the adjusted trial balance, meaning that we have made adjusting journal entries but not closing journal entries. Remember, closing journal entries is where we close net income and dividends into retained earnings. Prior to doing that, retained earnings just represents a beginning balance. Because remember, retained earnings is an account. Just like cash or just like accounts receivable, it's an account. And the only way that you can adjust that account is by doing a debit or a credit. Okay? This over here, this report, is just that. It's a report. It's a calculation. It does not actually change the balance of retained earnings. You must do debits and credits to change the balance. And that's what we do during closing journal entries. So this equals the beginning balance, which is shown on the trial balance here. Adding net income, which is shown as net income here on the income statement. There are no dividends, so you get the ending balance here. Notice that the ending balance is equal to the balance sheet amount here, shown in retained earnings. Okay? And we've equaled that by simply doing it plus or an equals and grabbing that amount over here. Okay? All right, this solution will be posted on Moodle. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.